everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sound Design Monday. My name is Sandworld, and today we are going to be creating this sound. So obviously this is a sound from Thomas Newson's Flute. Now I don't know if Thomas Newson actually made a patch in Massive or Silent 1 in order to create this lead. He may have sampled the flute, I'm not sure. My whole purpose of this, and I just finished making this patch, was to pretty much just recreate it as closely as I could. So what we are going to be doing today is we're going to be recreating it before we get started. Like always, all my presets and MIDI files can be downloaded on my Facebook page in the Downloads tab. If you don't know where that is, check the description link. And if not, if you want to look it up yourself, it's Sandworld Music in Facebook. Alright, so let's get started. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using only one oscillator. We're going to be using a square wave. So what you want to do is we're going to be using a square saw 1 wave, which from the basic section of Massive, that's just going to decide what type of wave we're using. If you're unfamiliar with synthesis, and pretty much what happens in the oscillator section is you choose a wave, and Massive has a crap load of waves, as you can see, but most of the main ones are going to be a square, saw, polysaws, sine, triangle. Those are pretty much the main ones you'll see in every synthesizer. So we're going to be using a square saw 1. We're going to move the wave to a position all the way to the left. So this is going to be a very modulated, enveloped square wave, and that's how we're going to achieve that sound of the flute. Pitch is going to be up to 12. Intensity all the way up, amp all the way up. Your filter is going to be in the middle. We're going to be using 2 filters for this sound, which I'll talk about in the future. So now what we are going to be doing is we are going to be going into the noise section. We're going to be applying some bright noise. You want the amp all the way down, your color all the way up. The reason for this is because we're going to be applying a macro from the macro section of Massive in order to kind of, add effects to the sound later on. Next, we're going to go into the feedback section, and again, just turn it on. Route it all the way to filter 1 and leave the amp all the way down. Another macro knob will go there. For insert 1, we are going to be applying a frequency shift, and this is where the sound's going to be coming out of the main sound. Without the filter, it's going to sound a lot sawish in a way, but once we apply this filter here, we're going to be hearing the flute coming out more. So in insert 1, we're going to be applying a frequency shifter all the way up, dry and wet, pitch at 2 o'clock. What this is going to do is it's going to change the pitch of the square wave, and this is how we're going to be recreating the flute sound. For insert 2, we're going to be applying a sample and hold, pitch at 3, but we're going to leave the dry and wet knob down in order to apply a macro there, and so we can always change the sound. Now we're going to go into filter 1. We're going to be having a daft filter. This is going to be pretty much the main filter we're going to be using mainly for the sound. It's going to affect it the most. You want to leave the cutoff all the way down, resonance at around 11 o'clock. That blue thing you see is going to be an envelope we're going to be applying to it, and that's how we're going to get we're going to mimic the flute's characteristics. So if you were to play the sound, you would hear nothing coming out, maybe a little bit, since we don't have this fully routed to filter 1. So yeah, make sure to put this up all the way. It's just the amp volume. Okay, so now we go into filter 2. We're going to be applying a scream filter. We're going to be putting the scream knob all the way up, the resonance at around 2, and the cutoff like around 1 o'clock. And again, push it all the way up. Okay, so once we have that, we're going to go into envelope 4. Your attack is going to be set to around 10 o'clock, level all the way up. All the attack's going to do in envelope 4, which is routed to your amp, is it's going to decide how fast the sound comes out. Decay is going to be set at 12 with the level all the way up. And your release is going to be set at around 1 o'clock here. So this is just routed to your envelope. Your envelope's routed to the amp 4 will always be like that by default. The best way to say this is, I'm sure many of you have probably seen my tutorial, Silent 1's ADSR. Same thing here, the amp is going to be controlled. It's just that you have a visual representation of it instead of just, the usual knobs you have in Silent 1. Okay, so now we're going to go into envelope 1. Your attack's going to be all the way down with the level at 3, so we're not going to really get that whole volume out. We're not going to get the filter going all the way to the top, but we're going to get it going pretty much there. So then we're going to put our decay at around 10 o'clock, level at 9, and this is going to turn this sound into a pluck. If I were to put the level up, the sound will change. you can see. So usually when you're making plucks, you always want a low decay with the level down. That just gives it more of a pluckish feel because you can't sustain the note that long. And you want a fast attack whenever you're creating those type of sounds. You can see. Okay, so then we go into our release, and that's going to be set around 8 o'clock. So now once you do that, you're going to drag this and put a filter 1 here at the cutoff, and you're going to pretty much click and hold and put it up to around 4 o'clock. You can keep going up. Do it to your preference. As always, you can mess around with it and make the sound to your liking. But for me, I have it around 4 o'clock. Okay, so once we have that, now we can start going more into other stuff. So we're going to go into the oscillator section. You want to put your glide all the way down. We don't want the sound gliding at all. So the glide section is here. Just put equal time all the way down. Now we're going to go into voicing. And this is a very important part. We're going to be putting the unisono at 3. And we want to change the sound of monophone. That's all that's going to do is it's going to let you play one note at a time. If you put it in polyphone and play more than one note, it's going to sound really bad. So the whole purpose of putting it on monophone is just so you prevent that. Now, just a quick fact is that most basses are always going to be in monophone because when you apply more than one note and there's distortion going on, the high frequencies of the distortion tend to add up, and then it kind of makes your sound really, really muddy and distorted to the max. So usually basses are going to be put on monophone. So we're going to be putting a pitch cutoff on this. We're going to do 0.50, and we're going to be applying a macro to this later on as well. You're going to turn the pan position on, and we're going to put the sound in mono just for the whole purpose is that you want the sound to be dead in the center. We don't want it to have that much of a stereo because then it's going to sound more of a different type of sound, not like a flute. You want that dead in the center. And also, I'm assuming most of you guys are going to be using this sound to create big room house, so it's always best to leave these kind of sounds in mono. But if for some reason you want to put it in full, then by all means go ahead. That's just going to add more stereo feel to it. Okay, so once we have all that, now we go into the effects section of Massive FX1 here. We're going to be applying a Bronner tube to this. We're going to be putting a lot of drive, so our dry and wet's going to be set at around 11 and 12. The drive is going to be set around 1 or 2. We're going to be putting reverb, dry and wet at around 10 o'clock, 11. Size, 1 o'clock. Density all the way up. And color at around 1. And then we're going to be putting any Q on this. We're going to get rid of a little bit. On the low shelf, we're going to put it down to around 11. Low shelf is pretty much this, just so you can get a visual. It's going to be, turn one on. This is a high shelf, so you can put up and down. So a low shelf is going to be the opposite of that. So we can put the low shelf like that or like that. So that's going to be a low shelf. And then we have a high shelf as well. So we're going to do a low shelf, and we're going to get the low frequencies a little bit out to around 11, between 11 and 12. Our boost is going to be at 2 o'clock. Frequency at around 2, and a high shelf around 2 o'clock as well. Okay. Just making sure I didn't forget anything. So once we have that, we should be getting this sound. So now let's start applying some macros. Now, the reason I love Massive is over silent a lot is just because of the macro section as well. And pretty much what this is, it's pretty much going to let you use these macros so you don't really have to control many parameters at once. So what you can do is you can apply a macro to the noise and then put the same macro onto the dry and wet of a reverb. And then you can control 2 effects at once to get those effects that you want. So what I'm going to be doing is for one, I'm going to be, for macro 1, I'm going to be applying it to amp of the noise, so we can add white noise if you choose to. For the amp, you want to click. You're going to drag here, click, and you can drag it wherever you want. Like as you can see, so that's going to work. If you put it at 12 o'clock, if this is all the way up, it's going to be at 12 here to the max. So you can see when we add that noise, it's going to add a little bit more of ambience to it. So pretty much just add 1 here, put it all the way up, and then you can choose to add it and if you want to or not. So we're just gonna call it noise. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna ping 2 onto the frequency here. So pretty much, let's see. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna drag this into the feedback section. We're gonna call this bleep, and pretty much what's gonna happen is when you put the feedback on, it's gonna turn more into a bleepy kind of sound. Here we go. So that's always, you guys can choose to turn that on or not. Next, we're gonna put a macro 3 on the sample and hold. As always, you guys can choose to use that effect. Okay, and then next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna be putting another macro for the reverb. So if you want to kind of get that sound to sound a little bit more ambient, you can apply this reverb. You can increase it as well like this. Okay. So hopefully this tutorial was helpful for you guys. I'll try and add more macros. So for those of you downloading the presets off my downloads tab, but this is how you would recreate the flute sound. The amazing thing with sound design is that you can recreate almost any sound using massive or silent 1. It all depends. It all takes a bit of creativity. But if you wanted to create some drums, you can use massive as well. If you wanted to create like the sound of the ocean, you can use massive as well. All it takes is a little bit of knowledge. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. This one was really, really, really fun to make. And hopefully you guys enjoyed and can make some unique tracks with it. Anyways, guys, this is Sans World. Make sure to like my Facebook page, subscribe, hit the like button on this video, comment, and I'll see you guys next week.